investigating journalism. We're not serving the
media bias, I guess, just depends on which channel you watch.
The mainstream media has gone over the top.
Washington is broken.
They can't stand the truth, and apparently the news media can't stand the truth.
Media that affirms their own point of view.
I can't believe anything that they say. I just really can't.
I think that we need a different point of view other than the Republican and the Democratic Party.
Welcome to For the Record. I'm Lori Dew. Tonight our story focuses on the Muslim Brotherhood in America. This is an organization that terrorizes its opposition and funds enemies of the United States. Muslim Brotherhood affiliated groups in the U.S. continue to operate freely, even though federal courts have deemed them to be criminal and hostile to the U.S. In September 2012, The Blaze released the film The Project, which exposed the post-9/11 emergence of the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States. That feature also revealed that the Brotherhood has successfully infiltrated key areas of American society, law enforcement, and government. Tonight, we update this story and show how the Muslim Brotherhood's influence has become a major threat to our national security, using one of its most powerful weapons, civilization jihad.
After 9/11, in an attempt to assess the threat to the nation, leaders reached out to Islamic organizations in the U.S., such as ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America.
Keep our country strong for the sake of the good and righteousness, and protect us, our Lord, from all evil.
And CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. The objective was to differentiate between Islam and radical Islam.
The face of terror is not the true faith of Islam. That's not what Islam is all about. Islam is peace. These terrorists don't represent peace.
However, CARE and ISNA would eventually be among the groups named as unindicted co-conspirators in the largest terrorism financing trial in U.S. history.
The Holy Land Foundation called itself a legitimate organization dedicated to humanitarian needs, but the government accused it of funneling up to $12 million to Hamas.
Money raised by the Holy Land Foundation is used by Hamas to support schools and indoctrinate children to grow up into suicide bombers.
The Texas-based Holy Land Foundation was once the nation's largest Muslim charity. Federal authorities accused the group of giving more than $12 million to support the Palestinian terrorist group Hamas.
Another thing here, Wendy, that was exposed in this trial was really the clandestine network of radical Islamists right here in the U.S. A lot of so-called mainstream American Muslim groups are linked to the radical Muslim Brotherhood movement.
The objective is clear. The goal of a global Islamic State has been announced to the world. Yet the Muslim Brotherhood, an organization that openly supports an anti-American agenda, operates freely on U.S. soil.
The Muslim Brotherhood's own strategic documents that Western authorities have uncovered, time and time again, have talked about getting key positions in law enforcement, in the government, in the FBI, CIA, local police, state police. This is the goal.
Eric Stakelbeck is a terrorism expert and author of the book, The Brotherhood, America's Next Great Enemy.
I compare it to a strategy of termites. The Muslim Brotherhood in America, and really around the world, are like termites. They burrow into a host society, they eat away at it until the day comes where they are ready to make their move.
It is no longer speculation. The Muslim Brotherhood has infiltrated America. These notorious sponsors of international terrorism have had extensive access to U.S. leaders.
For many years, one of the most prominent Muslims in America, Abdullah Rahman al-Amoudi, had great access to the Oval Office of Bill Clinton. He, in '96, got President Clinton to establish for the very first time a chaplaincy corps in the military and the federal prisons, a Muslim chaplaincy corps.
Michael Del Rosso is a national security expert for the Department of Defense and a designer of national security intelligence programs for the Pentagon.
And here's a man who right now is doing a 23-year sentence in federal penitentiary because he was simultaneously a senior financier for Al-Qaeda.
Al-Amoudi was a U.S. envoy to the Middle East and was once part of U.S. diplomatic missions to the region. In September 2003, when he was arrested, federal law enforcement officials called it a severe blow to Al-Qaeda.
Abdurrahman Al-Amoudi, convicted and identified by the government as being a financier for Al-Qaeda, a very senior financier, I might add, per the U.S. government, U.S. Treasury Department, and the Department of Justice.
John Guandolo is a former FBI counterterrorism agent.
And that one data point, if it doesn't do anything else, should smack every American in the face like a 2x4. The level of gross ignorance and incompetence at that level.
While Al-Amoudi is behind bars, other Muslim brothers have risen to positions of influence.
I believe the most dangerous Muslim Brotherhood-linked individual in America is a guy by the name of Mohammed Majid. Now, he's the president of the Islamic Society of North America, ISNA for short, and what makes Majid so dangerous is his access to the White House, to the halls of power.
In an open show of support for ISNA, in August 2013, President Obama released a video message that aired at the group's annual convention.
He was addressing a self-stated enemy of the United States because, again, the explanatory memorandum lists ISNA in that 1991 explanatory memorandum. It says these are some of our organizations in this battle to destroy Western civilization. They were listed amongst the 243 unindicted co-conspirators in the case. There's no doubt that any of the unindicted co-conspirators would have a rough time beating those charges with federal prosecution.
Even though ISNA was clearly tied to criminal activity, its leader, Mohammed Majid, maintains a close relationship with the Obama administration.
This is a guy who has met personally with President Obama to advise him on everything from immigration to counterterrorism to the Middle East.
There were instances in which the Attorney General of the United States was canceling meetings because Mohammed Majid was going to be present in the room. So you've gone from just six, 7 years ago where he was persona non grata to being probably the top advisor on Islamic and Muslim Middle East affairs issues for the Obama administration.
He advises national security staff and the National Security Council, as a matter of fact. He has briefed and moderated panels at CIA headquarters at Langley. He's won awards from the FBI. I mean, this is just an absolute catastrophic failure on the very agencies and organizations in our government that are supposed to be defending us.
In April 2012, the blaze exposed another Muslim Brotherhood operative working within the United States government. In 2002, Mohammed El-Abiyari founded the Freedom and Justice Foundation in Plano, Texas. Freedom and Justice is the political party of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. He was appointed a member of the Homeland Security Advisory Council, which meant El-Abiyari had access to security documents. In October of 2011, it was reported he took sensitive reports from the Texas Department of Public Safety.
Were you aware of that?
No.
Thank you, Mr. I'm telling you it happened. Do we need to appoint somebody, or will you have that investigated yourself, and if so, by whom?
Well, since I don't know the facts, I'll have to look into the facts.
So you'll be the one to make that call?
We'll have somebody, it'll be myself or someone.
Does it concern you at all that it happened?
The gentleman's time has expired.
Through a Freedom of Information Act request by the watchdog group Judicial Watch, it was discovered that despite assurances under oath from then Secretary Janet Napolitano, there is no record of any DHS investigation into Mohammed El-Abiari's alleged wrongdoing.
Napolitano lied to Congress through the teeth about Mohammed El-Abiari during the testimony with the interchange between Janet Napolitano and Congressman Louis Gohmert.
Has El-Abiari's status on Homeland Security Advisory Council changed?
No.
It did not bother you that he accessed information.
She got indignant and attacked Congressman Gohmert for even raising these questions, questioning his motives.
He accessed some information. What bothers me, quite frankly, are the allegations that are made against anyone who happens to be Muslim.
And we come to find out that she was lying through her teeth.
Despite allegations of breaching his security clearances, in September 2013, El-Abiari was promoted to a senior position with DHS. He announced his promotion via Twitter, where his account proudly displays this symbol of support for the Muslim Brotherhood.
Then you have Louis Safi, who was the Pentagon's top Islamic advisor responsible for hand-picking the Muslim chaplains for the Department of Defense.
Safi is a former senior official with ISNA. During his time as an executive, the organization was named as an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation trial. In 2005, he began lecturing on Islam as a military subcontractor. That same year, he was listed as unindicted co-conspirator number 4 in another terror case.
And he pops up here about 2 years ago in Istanbul as the political director for the Syrian National Coalition, basically the Muslim Brotherhood-controlled exile political front trying to topple the Assad regime.
The American people need to take a hard look, both sides of the political aisle, at who these leaders are, and need to take a full account, because I think they are providing a lot of wiggle room, and more than wiggle room, a lot of free room for these jihadis to move in the United States.
Our cause is just. It's a military coup. We will bring it down even if it costs us our lives.
In September 2013, Jihad al-Haddad, a senior advisor and spokesman for the Muslim Brotherhood, was arrested in Egypt for inciting the killing of anti-Brotherhood protesters.
The most recent case is Jihad al-Haddad. He's the son of the foreign minister for the Muslim Brotherhood, and Jihad is the spokesman for the Freedom and Justice Party. And for years, he worked as the Cairo director for the Clinton Foundation. And there was a substantial overlap between his working with the Clinton Foundation and his working with the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. During Morsi's tenure, he was defending the policies, defending attacks on protesters, going back to last December, torturing Christians at the presidential palace, basically being the propaganda man for the Muslim Brotherhood for Western audiences.
Another Muslim brother featured in the film The Project was Dr. Salah Sultan from Columbus, Ohio.
When I started looking into Salah Sultan, one of the things I did was his address was on his resume, and so I looked it up, and lo and behold, right here is where he lived. Not more than a mile from my house.
Dr. Salah Sultan was the religious director at the Masjid Omar Mosque. He later moved to the Noor Islamic Cultural Center in Hilliard, Ohio. Poole wrote an article about Sultan referencing previously published materials demonstrating his connections to terrorist organizations. The interfaith community rallied around Sultan, as did the local newspaper.
And again, this is a figure that when I reported on him back in 2005, 2006, that he was a Muslim Brotherhood figure, I was attacked by the Columbus Dispatch and other local media outlets and the local Muslim community saying, well, you know, he's a moderate, you know, interfaith leader.
On August 20th, 2013, an arrest warrant was issued for Sultan in Egypt on charges ranging from sponsoring acts of violence to intimidating citizens associated with the anti-Brotherhood movement.
And we come to find out that, yes, in fact, he's terrorist-supporting, violence-endorsing senior Muslim Brotherhood leader, which is something that they readily acknowledge in the media in Egypt, but our media here has yet to come to terms with.
Intelligence experts note this overwhelming evidence of Muslim Brotherhood infiltration is possibly the greatest present-day threat to national security.
It says that the United States counterintelligence is completely broken. It says that there has been a very successful insurgency that has ideologically subverted political elites using tools that are taken right out of the Soviet handbook on such activities, political correctness being one of them. And probably one of the finer definitions of ideological subversion I ever heard is, ideological subversion is, if I can control your information inputs, I can control your decision-making process.
I think a significant issue is our leadership, American leadership, because they're aiding, abetting, and providing comfort and safe zones for these guys and gals that are part of the Islamic movement here.
For the Record contacted the White House for comment on President Obama's video address to the Islamic Society of North America. We asked if the president was aware of the group's ties to the Muslim Brotherhood and to funding terrorism. We're still waiting for a response. When we hear back, we will let you know. We'll be right back. Welcome back. So far in our story, we have identified a number of Muslim brothers who have worked their way into areas of influence in America. Now we examine how the Brotherhood has used that power to sway and manipulate U.S. foreign policy.
Young men with no military experience took up arms. Muammar Gaddafi captured last Thursday by rebel fighters. President Mubarak had resigned.
A huge crowd gathered in Tahrir Square.
Thousands died in the fight for liberation.
The Arab Spring was and is a takedown of governments. And you're seeing Muslim Brotherhood operatives along with their Al-Qaeda, which are Muslim Brotherhood entities.
The United States, under this current administration, supported the Libyan rebels against the Libyan government. We know now, and we knew then, that the Libyan rebels were made up of Muslim Brotherhood and Al-Qaeda.
In 2011, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton announced that the United States formally recognized the rebel leadership in Libya as the country's legitimate government. That allowed the rebel government access to $30 billion in Libyan assets held in the U.S.
The Libyan Islamic Fighting Group in 2007 professed that they were aligned completely with Al-Qaeda. Belhaj, who we enabled with a NATO airstrike to have him be victorious in the Battle of Tripoli, is not only a known Al-Qaeda jihadi, but him and his cohorts in the Siege of Sirte and the Eastern Front, they have all led Al-Qaeda jihadi fighters in theater in Iraq and Afghanistan, fighting and killing American soldiers. And yet those are the people we chose to put in power. It was in an open press, and I'm quite honestly, I have no idea how the U.S. government did this.
Before supporting the Muslim Brotherhood in Libya, the Obama administration ended 3 decades of American relations with its most stalwart ally in the Arab world, former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak.
We supported and continue to support the Muslim Brotherhood's revolution against the Mubarak regime. That was Muslim Brotherhood, and in some cases we knew they're Al-Qaeda operatives, but primarily the Muslim Brotherhood against the Egyptian regime, the Mubarak regime.
The President and I discussed the importance of keeping Egypt's democratic transition moving forward, and I commended him on his pledge to serve all Egyptians, including women and minorities, and to protect the rights of all Egyptians.
But in early 2013, the people of Egypt rejected Mohammed Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood.
And as the tide has turned, and the military has now overthrown the jihadis. We support the jihadis, our government.
President Obama made clear our deep concern about the decision made by the Egyptian armed forces to remove President Morsi from power and to suspend the Constitution.
Going forward, I've asked my national security team to assess the implications of the actions taken by the interim government and further steps that we may take as necessary with respect to the U.S.-Egyptian relationship.
The Obama administration would like to see him back in power. I think it's pretty clear, make no mistake about it. They have condemned the Egyptian military. They have said again and again how Mohamed Morsi was the freely elected president of Egypt.
The Obama administration is not backing off its policy, which these Muslim Brotherhood officials have been recommending. They're continuing this policy of really a fantasy of backing these so-called moderate Islamists as the vehicle to bring democracy to the Middle East. At the end of the day, what it's brought is war and chaos and wide-scale murder.
After a wave of arrests of Muslim Brotherhood leaders, on September 23, 2013, an Egyptian court issued an injunction that effectively dissolved the Muslim Brotherhood in the country.
I think what we're seeing in Egypt is what those of us who understand this threat would love to see here in the United States. And there is a legal foundation to do it, that every Muslim brother in the United States should have handcuffs on him, should be deported at least.
Certainly in Libya, we ended up backing al-Qaeda, and what we did in Libya certainly informs and raises the concerns about what exactly we're doing in Syria.
We are providing money, material support, and in some cases advice, advisory roles, manpower. This is material support of terrorism. Al-Qaeda is a designated terrorist organization.
In September 2013, President Obama waived provisions of a federal law designed to prevent the supply of arms to terrorist groups, which cleared the way for the U.S. to provide military assistance to vetted opposition groups fighting Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad.
Their record in vetting has been atrocious. Again, remember, we had the martyrs of the February 17th Brigade who were guarding our consulate in Benghazi, and that didn't work out very well, but they were vetted.
We know that there's massive Muslim Brotherhood and al-Qaeda and other violent jihadi elements in almost all of the rebel groups fighting. And so you just had President Obama give a waiver. I don't know how legally that could even happen.
There are individuals in the U.S. government who I think are guilty of that, of aiding and abetting the enemy, of treason, and of material support of terrorism. And I think it goes right up to the president himself.
Established military doctrine, specifically there's an Army Field Manual for the intelligence preparation of the battlefield, and it reeks of common sense. If a professional in the national security spectrum of the United States engages an enemy of the United States, we need to identify the enemy, identify the doctrine that the enemy adheres to that makes them want to be our enemy, and identify their objective. We've failed to do that, and at a bare minimum, that's professional malpractice.
In 1996, Jordanian journalist Fuad Hussein spent time in prison with a militant Islamist named Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. Through that relationship, Hussein established a regular dialogue with Muslim brothers and al-Qaeda leaders. From his contacts, he developed a timeline for al-Qaeda's long-term strategy. This appeared in a book Hussein wrote in 2005. There were 6 phases in his timeline. The 4th focused on the collapse of, quote, the hated Arab governments from 2010 to 2013. It also called for economic warfare against the United States and for electronic attacks against critical infrastructures in the U.S., a topic we covered in an earlier For the Record episode. The final phase of al-Qaeda's long-term strategy is the reestablishment of the caliphate. The estimated timeline for Islamist world domination is 2020. We'll be right back.
Truth lives here.
Before we end tonight's show, we want to update you on a story we've been following closely at For the Record, America's border security. Last month, For the Record spoke to an active Border Patrol agent who told us of dangerous management practices within the Border Patrol that are risking the safety of Americans living near the border.
I've also been talking to some other agents from other stations, and you're following a group, you get close to the end of your shift, and they're saying, go home, we don't want you to get your overtime. So the group goes bye-bye because they're told to quit tracking the group.
On October 3rd, the Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council, Sean Moran, confirmed those allegations, saying he has gotten reports of agents receiving stand-down orders from every sector.
Breaking tonight.